Welcome back to our lesson, to our discussion on middleware. And so, if you recall from the last lesson, we said that a middleware allows us to uh, execute uh, operations before actually uh, arriving at the handler. Okay, so what I want to do in this lesson is to create a middleware that logs every request. Okay, so every request that comes in, we want to show it, we want to log it. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy and paste this middleware that we did the last time. Okay. Since the pattern is similar. So I'm not gonna call this security headers. I'm gonna call this instead log request, since it will be logging the request. And so I also want to use this middleware to demonstrate to you how we can do something before and something after. So what I want to do, I want to let's say we want to find out how long the request actually took to be processed, um, to be executed, for the handler to have gotten it, done what it needs to have done, and then return back to our middleware. Okay. Okay, so let's create a variable named start, and we're gonna say that start is time.now. Okay, so whenever we hit this middleware function, we're gonna start a timer, and what we're gonna do now, we will call the handler. So whatever we're supposed to hand this off to, we're gonna call them. Now, after we call them, then it's gonna, in this case, it's gonna go to mux, if that's the case, and then from mux it will go to the handler. Now when the handler finishes, then handler will pass control back to mux, and then mux will pass control back to our middleware. So it sort of goes down and it comes back up the chain of command. Okay, so after that has been done, then we want to do a bit of post processing. So we're back. If we're back, it means that we can ask how long it took. But let's just also do our info. So I'm going to say info log. That's the name of our logger, if you recall. And we're going to print F. And we're going to print, let's see, a string, another string, and let's do one more. Okay. And so all these parameters that will replace those strings will be these ones. We're gonna check the request struct, and we're gonna ask for the remote address, the address. Okay. R is a struct, and it has all these fields which tell us about the request, such as where did it come from, what is the prototype, proto. Okay, we could ask it what method was it? Okay, what method was it? Was it a get? Was it a post? We could ask, of course, what was the URL that was typed in? Right, so URL.request URI. And of course, the last thing I want to do is to find out how long it took to process this request. And so if we end up back in the middleware, it means that the request has already been processed. And so I can simply use the time.since function and just give it the start time. What this does is it checks the current time against the start time. So it finds out how long it took, right? So it returns the time elapsed since t. Okay, great. So I have that. And so now I can, oh, I have a slight problem. It's telling me that it doesn't recognize info log. Okay, I am sure info log is in main. Yes, but it's a part of the application struct. And if you recall, when we want the fields from the application struct, we have to make the function become a method on application. That's the only way we can access the fields. Okay, that's how dependency injection works. And so now I'm going to say app that. Good. So don't be alarmed that log request middleware is no longer a function but a method. That's quite okay, as long as it accepts a handler and it returns a handler. That's all we care about. Okay, so this is great. It's logging every request. So get the start time, call the next next handler in the chain, and when we do return to the middleware, we simply print out or we log the statistics. All right. So you can do something before, and you can do something after the serve HTTP call. Okay, so now we have to use this middleware. So let's go back to route. Okay, let's say we want this to be done on every request. So seems straightforward enough. All I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say log and see, notice it's telling me I have to say app, right? Because it's a method on application. And so now I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna put it in there. Right. Now what does this really mean? It means that when our program runs, okay, the server will pass control. It will call serve HTTP on the log request middleware. And so that initial request will be sent to log request middleware. And then log request middleware will take the request. It will take time.now, and then it will call the next handler in the chain, which happens to be security headers middleware. And so when we call security headers middleware, that will take the response writer, the request, and it will add the headers. And then when it's done, it will call who's next. And who is next? Mux. It will call Mux, and Mux, of course, will do its job, which is to call a handler. When Mux is finished, Mux will come right back to security middleware. And since there's nothing to do, then security middleware will come right back to log request middleware. And so in log request middleware, we have something else to do, which is to log this request. Okay, so again, middleware. Okay, you kind of go down, and then you come back up. Okay, or you could say you go up and come back down. But the point is, we move from one direction to the next, and then we reverse that direction. And so it's quite okay. You notice I'm chaining middleware. Okay, so the request has to go to this middleware first, and then this middleware will call the next middleware, and then that middleware will call some other middleware if there's another one, and this can go on indefinitely. All right. All right, so let's save this and let's spin up our server. Okay, and so did I save this? Let me make sure. Control C. Control, okay, Command S. Good, it's here. All right, so let me start up back. And so what I'm gonna do, I will, let's say, localhost 4000. Let's say show. Okay, let's say I want to create a new quote. Okay, so if I come back here, you'll notice that it's telling me what time, of course, but it's telling me that this is the IP address, the port, what is the prototype, HTTP 1, it's a get method, and then it's telling me the route that was called. So we did home, then we did show, and then of course the last thing we did was to get quote. Okay, that's what the URI returns, request URI. And finally, it gives me how long the request took. Okay, how long the request took. Microseconds, milliseconds. All right. And so there you have it. A rather straightforward middleware. The key thing to take away is you can do things before you call serve HTTP on the next handler in the chain, and you can do things after that handler returns to the middleware. All right, great. So that is middleware. It's a rather straightforward concept. Notice the pattern never changes. You have to create an anonymous function. You do what you need to do, and then you give it to the http.handler func to turn it, to convert it into a handler, and then finally you return that handler. Okay, and as you know, handlers are things that can handle requests, and so the server can call it. If it can handle a request, the server can call it. Great. I'll see you in the next lesson where we will continue looking at middleware. And then we can move on to some more refactoring. I want to do a bit more refactoring of our code.